morning, good afternoon, or good evening, where you're dialing in from. We'll give it a few seconds for the room to fill, and then we'll kick off with hopefully a very insightful session. I think the number is stabilizing a little bit, so let's kick off with this webinar, Beyond the Tool, Building Institutional AI Literacy and Capability. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you're dialing in from. And please let us know in the chat where you are from. We are very interested in hearing from our audience. Also, if you should have any questions or comments, feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try and get to them towards the end. So I am Lisette van Kessel. I am very honored to moderate today's session where we aim to move beyond the hype of artificial intelligence tools. And I'm from Knowledge. And with me, I have Dr. Lynette Pretorius, an award-winning educator and researcher specializing in academic language, literacy, and research methodologies. She's a senior fellow of Higher Education Academy and has a diverse background spanning medicine, science, education, and counseling. Welcome. Also with me is Isaac Tabor. As the head of digital learning at Knowledge, Isaac provides strategic oversight and digital learning trends and is the lead developer of our COMU Learn digital learning environment, where we deliver self-paced training to higher education institutions worldwide. And also with me, Dr. Salim Razi, the founder and director of the COMU Center for Academic Integrity. He's globally recognized expert in academic integrity and the recipient of the Turnitin Global Innovation Award, and also an associate editor of the International Journal for Educational Integrity. So most institutions currently approach AI as a technical challenge to be managed. However, we are here today to argue that true readiness that requires a fundamental shift. So moving our focus from the tools also to the people alongside. And we would like to explore systematic literacy that encompasses ethics, pedagogy, and a long-term institutional capability. Our goal is to discuss how universities can bridge the gap between AI theory and practical implementation, ensuring that students and educators and everyone else in the university are not just using AI, but they are collaborating with it effectively and ethically. So welcome to everyone. And to set the context for this discussion, I would like to start with sort of like a lightning round for our panelists, let's call it that, in about 30 seconds. And feel free to take that 30 seconds for both questions that I was thinking of. Could you define how AI literacy in higher education context today? How do you define AI literacy in a higher education context today? And as a second question, what does meaningful institutional AI readiness actually look like in practice? I suggest we start with Lynette.
Sure. So hi, I'm coming to you from Australia, and I am a AI literacy person who has done AI literacy work since ChatGPT came out, basically in end of 2022. So I see AI literacy as a foundational core graduate attribute, but more importantly, I see it as not just a skill. It is something where you and the AI are collaborating together. So it requires a more higher level understanding than just how to use the tool, but to actually understand what the tool is and how it is actually co-constructing knowledge with you as you are using it. And so because of that, I see that the higher education institutions need to teach students and staff how to use these tools effectively so that they know what they can and can't do, how they work, all those sorts of things, so that they don't approach it as a, useful question and answer service, but rather as something that can work with them to elevate their work.
Thank you, Lynette. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. I'm happy to dive into that a little bit more later. Salim, would you like to share your view?
Yes, thank you. I'm joining from Çanakkale, and here I am working as a professor at the Department of English Language Teaching. We are training teachers, EFL teachers. So when it comes to my understanding of AI literacy, okay, we have several AI tools available for our institution, for our students, and for the teachers as well. However, in higher education setting, we need to understand how those AI systems work, critically evaluate their outputs, and how we can use them ethically. It includes how we can use them transparently, for example. This is very important for me, and recognize both possible limitations here, apart from their contributions. And for me, AI literacy is closely connected to academic integrity. Uh, since I'm not directly involved in the technological aspect of AI tools, my expertise again with those tools go back to ChatGPT, and my familiarization also does this. So when I connect academic integrity and those tools, I understand that as students and educators, we need to responsibly work on those tools, including human judgment, creativity, and also scholarly values.
Yeah, thank you very much for your view on that. And I'm also happy that we can discuss that a little bit further down in the webinar. Isaac, what's your view on AI literacy and AI readiness?
Sure. I'd like to begin just by telling everyone again, my name is Isaac Tabor. I'm a learning designer primarily. I'm in charge of K&E Learn at Knowledge E, but it's also been my pleasure to sort of cobble together our AI program with Salim and Lynette. And whereas they are the leaders in teaching AI literacy in this discussion, I consider myself more as a practitioner. So I'm approaching this discussion as a practitioner. And from what I have learned just from in the field and dealing with universities, especially locally in the UAE, and from learning from leaders like Salim and Lynette, is that the way I see AI literacy in a higher education context is very much about being able to consistently evaluate AI outputs, developing critical thinking skills that are specific to the context of AI, of course, which are quite different from how we've used critical thinking skills with other technologies in the past, and then making those contextually informed judgments, not just on appropriate use of AI, which is where ethics comes in, of course, and standards of academic integrity, but also on the relevant uses of AI. So, of course, there's an environmental consideration there that we could talk about, but we won't go into that right now. But this idea that we choose a specific AI tool for a specific use case. And in that way, we can also really foster creativity and innovation when we think about where we want to go and knowing how to choose the right tool for that purpose. So also, if I'm thinking about meaningful institutional AI readiness and what that looks like, it's that faculty and staff feel confident and supported in being able to experiment with certain AI tools and being able to innovate to create things that perhaps they couldn't have done in the past, or that would have been much more difficult or would have required more resources to do in the past without that AI support.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it is interesting indeed to have that knowledge from you as a person to also be able to judge the AI tools that you're using, right? And whether they are serving the need and whether they are doing that in an ethical and responsible way. No, absolutely agree. So I'm very happy to move in like a bit of specific focus area for each of you. They are slightly different, but I feel they're coming together really nicely in talking about this larger approach. So I'd like to start with Lynette. Your framework, it approaches AI literacy systematically rather than tool by tool approach. Why is that distinction so important for long-term success? And what to you are like the biggest misconceptions that you see that institutions are having about AI capabilities?
Yeah, so my framework I developed with a colleague and we looked at how I experienced AI versus how he experienced AI because we came from two very different contexts. where in Australia, they went all in on AI really quickly. And in other countries, they tried to prohibit it. And then those countries where they were trying to prohibit it ended up being a little bit behind the game and trying to catch up. And so through exploring this, we developed the framework that has multiple levels because a lot of people perceive it as like a program, like Word or EndNote or NVivo or something like that. But it's not just a piece of software, right? So you don't just need that foundational level, like how do I find Gemini and ask it a question? You also need to know what to do with it when you get the answer. How do you repurpose it and use it for your specific purpose? And that's sort of like basic level use case, right? But for you to actually become AI literate, you have to move beyond seeing it as that tool into seeing it as a discussion partner that is helping you think through things and maybe thinking differently about it. The other element is ethics, which we were talking about before. Ethical use is very important, and there's all sorts of ethical considerations to take into account there. And then the underpinning one that we have is emotions, because if we're scared the robots are going to take over the world, we're probably a little bit scared of teaching these things new stuff about the world. In terms of how other people are perceiving it, so certainly in my context, we are very much pushing ahead with it. The Australian context have moved well beyond trying to inhibit it or anything like that, but rather approaching it as something that you teach from the beginning, you embed within, or all our assessment processes have changed into process rather than product a lot of the time, all sorts of different and interesting and creative ways of doing assessments. In some other contexts, and in particular, I'm talking about North America here, there is a very big pushback against it, and they are seeing it more as like an evil tool that'll take my job. And because of that, they are not actually engaging as much with what it can and can't do. And so they're not learning the critical evaluation skills that are actually necessary to use these things effectively. And there's a lot of tension that's happening there. The other misconception that I talk about a lot because of me being not English is not my first language, and most of my students are international students. So there is a real benefit in these tools and helping them access academic knowledge, share their different ways of knowing things, because academia is very English centric. And there's a lot of great ideas out there that just happen to not be in English. And these tools help them to do that. But then you get those people who are pushing back against it, perceiving it as some sort of like laziness or cheating or something when they use these tools. Whereas actually those tools are just helping them access the space that other people have had access to for a long time.
Thank you. I agree 100%. I think especially around the language part, which also English is not my first language, I find it helping me to close so many knowledge gaps and translation gaps that I feel like I am at the same speed as someone who has English as their first language. So yeah, definitely agree on that part. So Isaac, I'd like to move a little bit towards the practical implementation side of AI literacy. So from your experience working with various institutions, where are universities currently succeeding, and maybe where are they struggling a little bit more in their AI jobs? Sorry, difficult word. AI adoption journey. So we already heard from Lynette a little bit that it may be different in regions. But also, I'm curious what inspired the development of the KNE Learn Professional Use of Higher Education program, for instance, to help bridge that gap between theory and implementation.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear from Lynette about how there are regional differences, about AI adoption and also confidence and skepticism about AI use. From what I've seen in the UAE, One of the big things that stood out early on already was the UAE signing up with OpenAI for a nationwide sector integration of OpenAI tools. I think the UAE was one of the first countries, if not the first, that signed up for that sort of nationwide subscription to OpenAI tools, including ChatGPT. So many universities here in the UAE, especially the government-funded ones, Abu Dhabi University, University of the United Arab Emirates, Said University, there's many of them. They have access to the full OpenAI suite of tools, and these were also early on already integrated into many of the university systems, be it their research systems, the learning management system, student information systems. Now, of course, we can talk more about what that integration looked like and whether that was a good thing to do so early on or not, but the access to the technologies has been there since quite early on already. And I've also seen universities here in the UAE and also in the region pretty quick to take subscriptions to AI for research tools, whether it's Perplexity or Elicit or Consensus or any of these kind of tools. Where I see universities succeeding is that there are pockets of genuine innovation, particularly at the faculty level. So those faculty that are really spearheading the sort of experimental but innovative use of AI, finding creative, very much discipline-specific applications. And I've seen it particularly in things like engineering, architecture, applied media. And I also want to mention that if we're talking about UAE as a country, it's really leading the region as well in AI implementation and planning for large-scale responsible use. So within higher education, the Ministry of Education actually, along with a number of local universities, and led by Zayed University, I believe, is developing an AI competency framework, which they're hoping to roll out across all the universities in the country. And that one is going to have a kind of a AI readiness assessment tool built in where universities can benchmark themselves against each other and against kind of national standards as well. And the idea here is very much to build AI literacy capacity building programs to get everyone up to a certain level to ensure responsible use. So that's where I see universities succeeding with the support of the ministry, with support of the country. Now, of course, there's also areas where they're struggling. And I don't know if I would call it struggling is a big word. It's a heavy word. There's also other challenges, right? Which is better in some universities than others. But one challenge that I've seen, and this maybe is related to, for example, this nationwide adoption of OpenAI tools, is leadership mandating the use of certain AI tools without faculty buy-in or without proper training on the faculty level. So I've seen it at conferences in the UAE and at events where faculty members will say, well, I was told to use this tool and I was told I need to use it for this purpose and this purpose and this purpose, but I don't even know how to use it, or I don't even know why I would use it for these purposes. I was doing fine without it, and now all of a sudden I have to use this tool. And that's not really, that doesn't promote a culture of experimentation or innovation or even responsible use. So there is this kind of challenge between the top-down approach of mandating specific tools and that hindering faculty experimentation. And then what we're seeing now is faculty experimenting with AI tools and systems that may be better suited to their purposes, but without receiving that institutional support, because on the top level, they signed up to certain tools and that doesn't fit in that package. So I think the real struggle there is that AI adoption is still treated kind of as an IT procurement task. That's a tough word for me to say, rather than a professional development challenge, you know? And I think that's a challenge that will kind of iron itself out over time as institutions become more clear about which systems they want to put in, which IT supported or IT driven systems they want to put in place to increase operational efficiency, and as it becomes clear where IT is most efficiently used within universities. So moving on to our professional use of AI in higher education program and how that helps to bridge the gap, right, between AI theory and institutional implementation. In terms of inspiration for the program, we were seeing a pattern across universities that at the leadership level, there was quite some enthusiasm for AI, or perhaps this was also mandated from above, but that there's some confusion and skepticism at the practitioner level. And that the gap here wasn't access to tools. So like I mentioned, universities here in the region have quite good access to tools, but rather structured, contextualized guidance on professional use of AI. So how do you use it in the workplace? And what we set out to do here was build a program for practitioners to have the confidence to be creative with their AI use within the guardrails of responsible ethical use. So once you really understand what responsible use looks like, and once you have the confidence to say, oh, I know how to use this responsibly, then you can actually start experimenting, innovating, being creative with your use, and perhaps also showing others in your team or your department how to be creative with those tools and not feel skeptical or sort of hindered by university policies and regulations. And, oh, what does this mean for me? Am I going to get in trouble? Things like that. So we've used Dr. Lynette's framework, her AI literacy framework, as the base, as the core for the program, which has worked out really well. I'm very happy with it. Whenever we show it to universities here in the region, they also kind of light up when they see something like this because it's very relevant to what their faculty are going through and what they should be knowing about. And then the program culminates around a series of very practical prompts for research purposes that are sort of connected to standards of academic integrity in the era of AI, which Salim has helped us put together. So altogether, it's quite a rounded program for participants to develop that capability, not just have the knowledge, but have that practical capability of how to approach AI tools within the context of sort of either being mandated to use certain tools or to have to really, of course, have to adhere to institutional policies and regulations when it comes to responsible AI use.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac. Yeah, it also sounds like it gives them a foundation also to actually question the AI tool that's being used in the university and maybe perhaps look at other options that are either more responsibly or more ethically or more fitting those academic integrity standards, right? So
Yeah,
which
and
is actually a good. Oh, sorry, please go, Isaac.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, to have a voice, to have a seat at the table when saying, actually, we as faculty members, these are the tools that would be very handy for us, or these are the use cases that are best for us. This is where we see AI being best for us in terms of increasing that, not just the operational efficiency, but ultimately, I think for a lot of faculty members, they're passionate and they're interested about improving teaching and learning. So this is what would be best
Yeah.
when it comes to teaching our students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually this is almost a nice bridge to Salim and to talk about the ethical use being quite a concern. So what principles would you recommend guide institutional AI governance, and how can universities create policies that remain adaptable as these technologies evolve? And maybe furthermore, also from an academic development perspective, how is AI changing our expectations around academic skills and student employability? You quite a lot of questions. I'd be happy to repeat one after a few minutes. No worries.
Okay. Let me try to go step by step then.
Yes,
Before
absolutely.
indeed, I will respond to your questions. I'd like to go back to pre-ChatGPT era, what we had. We focused our attention on academic integrity, institutional academic integrity policies, because they were aligned with the principles of academic integrity. And when we investigated those policies at that time, we realized that most of the policies were focusing on detection aspect or reaction aspect. What do we mean? I mean, our major concern was plagiarism at that time, whether students were plagiarizing. So, for example, we use text matching tools to get similarity reports and then to understand whether students plagiarize or not. Some policies focus mainly on detection. Some others focus on reaction. Okay, we found some plagiarism. Now, what about the sanction? Which sanctions should be delivered? Some other policies combined detection and reaction together. However, later on, we realized that we shouldn't be focusing on merely detection and reaction. we need something else. We need proactive policies. We need pedagogical policies. What does it mean? It means that we need to stop cheating before it occurs. So that's why we focused, especially after 2015. That's why we focused on pedagogical aspects. Now, when we check what happens after November 2022, at the very first step, we realized that some universities banned to access ChatGPT, some other AI tools. However, we knew that it doesn't work. And here, when we talk about AI governance, we should not only be controlling technology. Instead, we should be doing something else. And here, of course, there are some principles that might be important for us. And the first principle that I will call is transparency. This is the most important aspect for me because, especially when I consider it from teaching perspective, as a teacher, as a professor, I need to know whether my students are using generative AI tools. And if they are doing this, for what purpose they do this? To generate their essays, to get feedback. If they are getting feedback, are they getting constructive feedback or are they getting corrective feedback? Are they asking those tools for proofreading or getting some constructive feedback to make it much better. So this is very important, and from also research perspective, this is important. I am also an editor at a journal, and this is quite important for us. If any prospective author is submitting a manuscript, it is important for us as the editors to know about generative AI use. We need transparency about it. Considering this transparency, I'd like to indeed make a reference to post-plagiarism. This is a new term indeed coined by Sarah Elaine Eaton, Professor Sarah Elaine Eaton of Calgary University in Canada. And Sarah is identifying 6 tenets of post-plagiarism. So we are now in a post-plagiarism era. What does it mean? It means that we need to forget about the past definitions of plagiarism. Now we will have new understanding of plagiarism, and we are in a hybrid writing mode. What does it mean? It means that we cannot ask our students not to use any generative AI tools. Instead, we need to teach them how to use them ethically. So, especially in my case, for example, I am dealing with English as a foreign language learners. So, this means that I'm asking my students to write an academic paper in a foreign language. So they will be getting some feedback from those tools in order to improve their writing. Or when it comes to, for example, brainstorming, they might be getting some feedback from those tools. However, we need clear policies. So when we talk about the policies here, there might be 4 different levels of policies. One, what about the national policies that we have in our country? And second, what about our institutional policies? Then our departmental policies. And when it comes to each course, we will have different policies. For example, in my case, I'm both teaching academic writing skills, and I'm also teaching practice. So when it comes to teaching practice, it might be quite reasonable for my students to use any AI tool in order to generate a material that can be used in their courses. Or when it comes to drafting their lesson plans, they can easily use generative AI tools without any ethical boundaries, considering about the ethical boundaries. However, when it comes to academic writing skills course, then things change. I need to be more reflective, more knowledgeable about how they are using those tools because it depends on the course outcome. So here, okay, we need policies, and when we are drafting our policies as a teacher, my policies may change from course to course. However, I need to consider my departmental policies, institutional policies, and if available, nationwide policies here. So in those policies, we will be making a reference to transparency, responsibility, and human judgment, because we know that as a human being, we are responsible for our use of generative AI tools. Okay, we get some ideas from those tools, but before we use them, before we disseminate those ideas that we get from those tools, we need to check whether they make sense, whether they are accurate and appropriate for our case. I guess this responds to your first question. And if
Yeah, I'm happy to repeat. So, from an academic development perspective, how is AI changing our expectations around academic skills? But even more important, maybe afterwards for student employability.
yes, this is another important concern. I mean, things are changing. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will lose our jobs because of generative AI tools. We may lose, but how will it work? If we resist changing ourselves and adapting ourselves to this new environment, then of course we can lose our jobs. Things are changing very fast in our era. So, 2 decades ago or 3 decades ago, for example, a teacher, an EFL teacher, let me say, for example, may graduate, get the diploma, and walk into the class, and then teach the same courses for several years without having any progress, without checking what happens in the relevant literature. However, we can't do it anymore. For any job, for any occupation, we need to carefully watch what happens and how those AI tools are changing the job that we are doing. So at the university, what we need to do now, we need to teach those skills to our students. Of course, it is not possible to teach everything to our students, but we need to show them how things are changing and how they can adapt themselves to the jobs that they will have in the future. This is going to be a very important criterion for them. And here, I guess, having some critical thinking, creativity, ethical reasoning, communication, and such skills will be very important. And in my expertise, for example, considering the writing process, we will be showing them how they can benefit from those tools and use them reasonably, ethically, to write their papers. So that will be important. And I guess they will need to understand accuracy, bias, ethics, privacy, and accountability in this changing world.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. No,
How
I was
does this
very
help?
interested by. Yeah, no, definitely. Very, very interesting answer. Especially where you talked about the part about institutions sometimes saying you can't use AI. So my daughter just graduated from secondary, and there she had a lot of assignments where it was specifically mentioned to not use AI. And I felt like actually there is a bit of a miss. Because actually what they should have done is they should have opened this project, I think, where they would have explained that if you use AI, then this is what we will allow, because we know that further down the line, you will be affected by AI, left, right, It doesn't matter where it's coming from, it will be there. So yeah, I definitely agree on that point that I think it's better to teach how to use it. And that's where that framework from Lynette also becomes very handy, instead of trying to forbid using it when actually it's the same as way back when we had computers and laptops and tablets, and you're not allowed to be on a tablet as a child, but actually you miss out later on. So I think there's all these disruptions, and then every so many years we just get a new one where we have to learn to work with it instead of trying to block it out of our systems, right? So no, absolutely.
I think in
Yes,
our
please.
case, for example, our university has quite a clear policy on how it can be used. And one of the things that they say is that in assessment tasks, if the educator wants to not use AI, they have to actually make a pedagogical reasoning for why that is necessary. So not just because I don't like it or, it's going to do the work for them or something, but there has to be an actual pedagogical reason why not, because we are trying to embed it everywhere and teaching them skills to use it well. So a logical example of saying, first do it without AI, then get AI to critique it, and then work with it to make it better, right? That's an appropriate pedagogical reasoning there, but just purely blocking it out doesn't actually make sense for the type of jobs out there in the future and the type of graduates that we are trying to, produce. The critical thinking scholars of the future need to know how to use these things well.
Yeah, great. I really like what your institution does, that they actually make you give a reason if you don't want them to use it. I think that's very forward thinking, actually, to be honest, from your institution. I'd
Yeah.
love to see that more often, to be honest.
Yeah, I think
Can we open the, oh, sorry, please, Isaac.
sorry, Lisa. I was just going to add to what Lynette was saying. I'm also, I'm very much in touch with centers for teaching and learning at universities in the region and the instructional designers that work there to support faculty members. And the big push right now is designing assessments that work in AI-supported learning environments. And when I say AI-supported learning environments, I mean students are using AI. So how can we build assessments for students that are using AI, and what does that look like? And I personally actually think it's a positive development, because for years or decades we've built assessments that don't really assess real life application of skills. Some of it is more just kind of assessing, did you memorize these facts, or did you memorize this information? And now we're actually being pushed to move into authentic assessments, real life application. And what does that look like? And in a way, preparing students more for what life is going to look like after their studies. So I see it as a positive development. Having said that, it's not quite where it needs to be just yet. We're seeing pushback from faculty members, like Lynette was saying. Some faculty members probably are not so happy about your policy at the university at Monash. But we're also seeing faculty really go into it in a big way, in a really positive way, and saying, "Oh, you mean I can do sort of real life simulations, and I can, recreate scenarios of what industry is going to look like. Or I can pair that. I can do community-based activities now. Oh, there's a budget for me now to send them out into the community for 3 months to do something, So that's one development that's been very positive in AI use and AI literacy building amongst faculty as well, I think.
Yeah, agree. I think it's one of these first disruptions where the students probably use it more and know more about the tool than the teachers did, right? And the educators. I think that was maybe a little bit of the scare at first, but I think it's really interesting actually, and maybe we should use students more to understand how they wish to use these kind of tools, right? So it also goes the other way, in my opinion, a little bit. But this is actually a great, nice way to dive into maybe a bit of a broader discussion. So if institutions treat AI simply as that technology challenge that they're facing at the moment, and rather than like a literacy and capability challenge, what do we think are they likely to miss? Do you want to start, maybe, Lynette? Well, what will they miss if they don't
I
treat it this way?
I really think they'll miss the creativity and that it can actually spark. and the critical thinking skills, which I know there's people say, oh no, it's going to make us all lose our critical thinking ability and all these things. But if it is taught well and used effectively, it can help you think more deeply about things. So as an example, if I write my paper and I say because our university now pays for Pro Gemini for everyone. So I ask Gemini, look at this section and tell me, act as someone who disagrees with my argument and give me 5 critiques of my work, right? Now I can start to think about, okay, well, do I agree with this critique? Do I not agree with it? How can I maybe preempt any peer review comments in my writing by adding a paragraph to address that critique, right? In a similar way, students can do that. And there are a lot of things that it does actually free up your brain space to be able to do more creative things in it. So I do a lot of work in a very niche creative research methodology. And I've done quite a lot of work with that and the image generation capacity and the poetry and the music and things that it can do, right? So I think there is a lot of creativity it can spark. I found myself where I was doing a study to see if it could do like data analysis and what it can do. And it was encouraging me to make connections between things I never really thought of, because it doesn't have a particular opinion about a particular theory or framework or something. It just does whatever you ask it to, right? So you can ask it a question that's a bit out of left field, and it can try and make connections which can help you think, oh, well, that's a bit of a different way to look at it. Let me think about that some more. And I think that's where the AI literacy is so important, because if you can use it well, then it can give you the space to start to explore those creative and critical aspects and those higher order thinking skills. But that's only the case if they know how to use it well, rather than just, copy paste, which comes back to the plagiarism discussion of before. There is a difference between using it as a text generator and actually collaborating with it to elevate your work. That is a very big difference that gives a very different outcome at the end. And that's what we need to encourage people to learn to do well, so that they can access the space to have that higher order thinking capacity and space to be able to do those things.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so not to derail the conversation, but I had that experience similarly when we started using ours in the AI discovery tool, that it was helping us to act as a research partner more than trying to come up with like different things or telling me how to write certain things, because that's not necessarily what we want, right? We want to make sure that we touched upon every angle of that topic. And sometimes that may not be the field that you have researched before. So you may not be aware of every angle that you could take into your research, or for any reason, writing your paper or whatever you are doing at that moment. So I really like that thought, that research partner thought.
Yeah, what I've done is, so I've got a customized version, which is really easy to do these days. You don't require any technical knowledge really to be able to create one. And I have taught it the type of work I do, the things I care about in my work. And then I've taught it, when I ask it a question, to always give me 3 options.
Nice.
And so when I ask him, what would you say? It'll say, well, option 1, you could do this. And the reason for that would be this. And then option 2 and option 3. And then me as the researcher can then look at it and decide, use my critical thinking capacity, which ones are the things that I'm actually trying to say or that I really want to do. What do I agree with? And use the justification it provides to evaluate its reasoning and whether that does actually make sense. That moves it beyond that just tool to that partner in the work that you are doing.
Yeah, I like that. So what I'd like to do is add a question from the audience. I know we typically wait until the end, but I actually think that this one is related to what we're discussing at the moment. So Dr. Rashid, thank you for joining us. He's asking, how would the panel view the notion that AI eventually will generate copies of similar-minded students, thereby limiting creativity and innovation? And I feel that's kind of what we're touching upon right now. Is there anyone who would like to start with that question?
Well, I can add from what I was saying before. I think there is that risk if people are not taught how to use it well, because then they'll just be like, whatever the AI says, I agree with, right? Robot people, just following the robot suggestion. But if you are teaching people the correct skills to be able to think for themselves with the AI, then I think it's actually the opposite that'll happen. And that necessitates us as educators first to learn ourselves what it can do and how to do it well, and then to teach others.
You.
May I jump in?
Yes, of course.
Here again, I will make a reference to post-plagiarism by Eaton. And one of the tenets, it touches human creativity. And Sarah says that in the post-plagiarism era, human creativity is enhanced. This is one of the tenets. What do we understand from this tenet then? Is it possible? We need to question ourselves. Is it possible for human beings to inspire each other? I'm talking to you, and you are talking to us as well, and the other panelists. We are talking to each other and to the audience as well. Do we inspire each other? Yes. What about artificial intelligence? We can be inspired by artificial intelligence as well. And it's not a threat by artificial intelligence here to human creativity. Instead, it is enhanced. Of course, we are talking about responsible use here, transparent and responsible use. If we can teach those skills, then it will be enhanced.
You, absolutely. Isaac, would you like to add to this discussion point?
Yeah, I think that part of this is also a curriculum design challenge. We're talking about AI literacy and AI literacy development amongst faculty. And I think this is also one of the reasons why it's so important, because we want faculty to be able to incorporate this into their curriculum, not just be critical about AI outputs, but about how we learn to use AI to support our thinking, our research, our practical application in our workplace, and even personally in our lives. So as students, what is our AI use going to look like once we've graduated? And how do we want to put ourselves forward in using it in the workplace? We don't just want to rely on what the company that we work for, the industry that we work for. We don't just want to rely on the policies that they set forward. We also want to develop sort of the next generation of leaders in AI use, because they are going to be the first ones to use it from the very beginning of their careers. And that's a big deal. So again, that's where that critical thinking aspect comes in very much so, and also pushing for creative use, and also very much pushing for it should be using it in relevant situations, not just in all situations. And I think we're kind of at a critical time right now where it can either swing one way or another. I know that's a bit of a controversial thing to say, but I very much see it that way, that either it's going to, people are going to want to use it just for simply everything, or we're going to get a new generation that's going to surprise us and say, well, you know what, I don't need it for that purpose. I want to use my own thinking, or I want to use my own hands for that purpose. And this is what I use it for. But that requires a certain level of literacy that's also taught. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really interesting, because I think this is what's happening, right? Probably before a student enters the school, they've already searched maybe 2 or 3 things on one of the generic ChatGPT tools that may not have anything to do with teaching or learning anything, but definitely maybe even for crossing the street, or what do you recommend I eat for dinner tonight, right? That's how it becomes at the moment. So how do we prepare students to not just use tools, but to collaborate effectively with AI systems? without over relying on those generic public tools that will not align with, or may not yet align with, academic integrity standards? How do we go about this?
So I can talk
Happy for anyone.
from my
Yeah.
experience. So, as I said, our university really is positioning itself as wanting to be the AI people. So we have all sorts of things that we've implemented for that. But in terms of teaching, I can give you an example for one unit that I teach. In it, it's a first year core unit for the master's program. So all students have to do this unit. And every week they have a practical activity where we introduced one AI tool that the way that they could potentially think they want to use. So maybe ChatGPT or Gemini one week, and then Notebook LM for reading and summarizing and creating podcasts, and then another one to see how it could create slides for a presentation or whatever. But those tasks are purposely designed to make them try something. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's explore why. So have that discussion in the practical tutorials that we run. Explore the benefits and limitations of the things and give them the choice. And then in their assignments, they don't have to use the AI if they don't want to. Either way, they require acknowledgement. So just like with referencing, you distinguish between your work and the work of someone else. In this case, the AI acknowledgement is between your work and the work of something else. That's how we teach them, right? And they get, we even have grades in the marking rubric that's attached to the acknowledgement. But it's not like did you have it or not have it, but it's how is it written? Does it actually reflect that thinking, a creative, critical thinking use of it, not just like copy paste, those sorts of things. And if they've chosen not to use it, as long as they have a statement in it that says no tools were used, that's fine too. So we give them the option and the agency to choose. And we teach them all the practical skills. How do you do it? What can you do? What can't you do? Give them lots of examples, but give them the freedom to explore and succeed or fail. And attach it to the process of the assessment. So instead of trying to mark the final essay and how pretty it is that process of the learning that they've gone through to come up with the essay at the end that's actually assessed.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anyone want to add to what Lynette was just saying?
Maybe I can make a reference to my own case here, and I previously developed anonymous multimediated writing model. That's the model that was awarded in 2015 and later acknowledged by Texas. Indeed, the intention of developing this model was preventing plagiarism before it occurs. But later, after emergency remote teaching, I made some adaptations. And after ChatGPT, I made additional adaptations. Now, considering the current situation, I adapted my model to enable my students to get constructive feedback from generative AI tools. So it provides an opportunity for them to develop their skills. And here I'd like to make a reference to previously acknowledge some terminologies like higher order thinking skills by Lynette, for example. So this is very important, and maybe we need to understand what we mean by metacognition here. Developing metacognitive skills. This is very important. And indeed, we will have three different aspects of metacognition here. How we plan our students before the task, how they observe themselves, their progress throughout the procedure, and what happens after they finalize the task, how they evaluate their own learning. We need to focus on those skills, and we need to teach them to better progress with higher order thinking skills so that they don't simply copy from generative AI tools and then use it as their assignment, but they get benefit from those tools in order to produce their assignments. And in my model, I do this. And I realize that prompt engineering is another important skill here. We need to teach our students how to create ethical prompts. So, as a teacher, I provide ethical prompts, very clearly drafted prompts for my students to be used for their assignments. So, in a way, it familiarizes them with some ethical prompts, and students, they will be using similar prompts for their tasks. So in terms of inclusiveness and equity, this is another important concept. But those prompts, tailored prompts, should help them to see good prompt examples, because prompt engineering is another important skill that we need to master here. I hope this helps.
Yeah, thank you, Salim. Actually, this ties in really nicely with a question that I see in the Q&A, because you're talking about specific prompts, and are these the type of guidelines and guardrails that universities are currently like establishing to document appropriate AI usage in their for students and researchers in their research and assignments, or is it something else that's in there as well? What's important for them to add to this guideline? We're slowly going into Q&A because I see some nice bridges with what they're asking and what we're talking about, which is actually great because we're getting closer to time. I definitely want to take a moment to get a final thought from each of you. But I think this would be a nice question to maybe we don't have enough time to really dive into it, but what is like the one thing that you would really want them to establish in those documents?
Okay, we already made a reference to policies, the importance of policies, and also guidelines are important, because policies are documents, very main documents that we prepare. We need them in order to cultivate a culture of integrity at the institutions. But without guidelines, we cannot use our policies. And considering generative AI issue, we need more effective guidelines. Okay, policies are important, but policies will be outdated very easily because of the technological developments. It's not quite easy to prepare guidelines. I mean, to prepare, sorry, policies for the institutions. It will take sometimes years for some institutions to prepare the policies and then to revise, to change those policies. However, we will need very brief policy documents accompanied by guidelines here. We can easily update guidelines aligned with the technological developments. And of course, we can include, for example, prompt engineering skills and proper use of sample prompts, for example, for each case. Detailed in those guidelines, and I believe they will help. We have such white policy documents, white guidelines, especially drafted in United Arab Emirates by Dr. Reza Khan. And I guess such documents, such guidelines will be helpful.
Yeah, thank you
I
for
just put a link there just as an example, because I agree. We have policies, but I mean, you can only make the policy so clear before the technology changes again. But the guideline is the guidelines for students to know what is appropriate and not appropriate, right? And this is that more metacognitive awareness that we were talking about before that the students need to develop. So if you're going to use it, this is what you should do and this is what you should not do. So when I actually teach AI master classes for students, and the key thing I keep saying is you don't want it to do the work for you. You want it to help you do your work better. And when we assess it, it is not did you use it or not use it, but did you use it well? So you don't need to necessarily submit all your prompts that you gave it, but you do need to acknowledge how you used it ethically and appropriately. Those are the sorts of things that I think we need to embed throughout.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that nice summary of how to start building on those. We'll go to our final quick question. One or two sentences because we're about at the end of our time, unfortunately, for this session. And I thank you so much for your wonderful insights. So if in one or two sentences you can mention what gives you the most optimism about the role of AI in higher education. I think I always like to end on a positive note, and I am very hopeful that I will get a very nice answer from each of you from your specific angles. Isaac, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned it already earlier, but I think what gives me the most optimism of it is really pushing institutions towards rethinking what educational models or pedagogical models look like in the age of AI when it comes to things like assessment, and really bridging that gap between industry and academia, and really thinking more about preparing students for life after university. And part of that, bridging that gap between industry and academia, we talk, I mean, it's talked about all the time about how can we get closer to what industry is looking for. But I've really seen it pushing these two together, and moving into things like authentic assessments. So what gives me the most optimism is is how this has sort of kickstarted that new push towards updating curricula towards new and more innovative teaching and learning practices. Now, part of that, as well as that, AI has real potential to reduce the kind of administrative and operational burden on universities so that academics and educators can free up time for the work that really matters, which is teaching, mentoring, research, things like that, and really fostering that innovation and creativity and developing in ways that has been hindered in the past as universities become bigger and bigger, and that operational and administrative load becomes bigger as well.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think that the more that we can insert in the curriculum design, the more time we have for everything else and focusing on what it can bring us towards the future. Lynette, would you like to share what makes you positive about this implementation?
So, I mean, I agree with Isaac, but for me personally, the thing that's most exciting is that it will, if used well, be able to help elevate more marginalized ways of thinking, which I think is really important. The world of academia tends to say that, it cares about ideas and that's all that matters. But in reality, the way that it's set up, it marginalizes a lot of people. And I think this has the potential to help those people who were previously marginalized by the status quo to actually access academia and elevate their voices and share their great ideas, which we will all benefit from in the future.
Great. It really removes that barrier that we have right now in access, not just to knowledge, but also if you're able to use those AI tools, I think we are able to make that gap even smaller. So thank you for that. I am looking forward to noticing more of these wonderful research that's being done in areas where it's now harder to get that visibility. Salim, let's end with you on a positive note. What's making you very optimistic?
Okay, very similar. Again, removing especially language barriers for us and for our students. This is very important. And as educators, I believe most of us we are focusing more on detection aspect right now. I mean, when we receive a writing assignment, for example, we first question whether it is written by our students or by any generative AI tool. But considering post-plagiarism era, we need to acknowledge that we are in a heavy writing mode. So unavoidably, there will be generative AI use. The important aspect here is transparency. Is the student transparent? And I believe we will draft our policies accordingly, help our students to develop those skills much better in the near future. And we won't focus, we won't give that much attention to detection. Instead, we will give our full attention to better progressing with the help of those tools.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this kind of concludes our webinar today. There's one more question that we didn't get to, but I'll take a look at it and see if we can answer that maybe in the follow-up email that we'll do with this recording. I want to thank my panelists, and I also want to note they are not just fantastic speakers in this panel, they are actually fantastic course leaders as well. You have heard a bit of talk about that professional use of AI in higher education program that we offer together with them. We have a fantastic offer for you, and we'll make sure that this is in the email as well for those that had to leave on the hour, where you can follow the full program, which is an AI accredited, sorry, we've been talking about AI so much, CPD accredited program. We'll offer for every individual who would like to take the full program 50% discount. You can scan this QR code, but we'll make sure that this is in the email, in the post-event email as well. And of course, we also can offer this for your institution if that's of interest. Then please reach out to us by email. I think marketing@knowledge.com is the one that I can always easily remember. So feel free to email us to get a really nice deal for your institution to follow this full program. And yeah, I think this ends our session today. And thank you again to Dr. Salim, to Dr. Lynette, and to my wonderful colleague Isaac as well for joining us in this very insightful panel. I really like how we could touch upon different angles. I'm happy that we're all excited about this initiative, but indeed with the right policies, with the right guidelines, with the right guardrails. And if you want to learn more about that, I would definitely recommend following this training. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you again at the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Lizette. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the invite. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And also, if you're still here, at least I have it on recording. I want to thank Mira, a colleague in our marketing team who helped you all in the back end make sure that it all ran smoothly from a technical perspective. So thank you for that. Thank you.